All right, thank you all for being here. I want to try broke between Creole and English. Let us wait. My name is Marilyn Garvin. I'm the president of the National Creole Council. They put me in charge to do the MC. Means I will practically guide you through the different steps what will happen today, right? Today is an important event. We have, with the assistance of the People's Constitution Committee, we're going to touch on a topic, basically an educational section, right, on basic rights and freedom and the law. We're going to start off with the national anthem sung by Lila Vernon in Creole. Everybody get a piece of paper. On the paper, you have one side the national anthem in Creole, and then you have the national prayer. We'll ask everybody to stand while we have the song by Lila Vernon. You could try and sing along, please. Thank you.
No
Thank you. Please remain standing. Please remain standing. We will now have Mr. Kashmir Clare doing the national prayer in Creole. Please, you could read along.
Good morning. I was saying to Ed or Nigel that some of us know the national prayer, but normally as soon as we start it, we go in English. So this will be in Creole. You will probably follow along. It's, Almighty God, you were the God forever, that through Jesus Christ you may show your glory to all of the nation. Please protect with precious Belize and keep it safe. Mighty Father God, we're full of wisdom and justice. Please help with Belizean government and people then with for your Holy Spirit, we strengthen we, advise we. Make for your wisdom for heaven, whether like one light, guide all of them plans there, and everything else where they might want to do. Then, with for you help, Father God, we want to get all of the things where we business forget. Please God, please God, please guide us so that everything what we do will bring peace, justice for everybody, freedom and happiness in our nation. Help we country progress, produce more and more things. Keep us sober as we carry on, and give we knowledge where we could use. We pray, O merciful Father God, that you want bless we know your holy law and practice we obey it. Keep we live together in a unity and in a peace where this world itself can give it. After we done enjoy all of the blessing then of this life, Father God, please allow we forget the reward where will last forever. When you done, get ready for all of them. One will love you. Amen.
Please remain seated. Please be seated. Sorry. I had to think to myself, I say, imagine we talk a lot of Creole, and one thing we talk it and another thing we read it, right? So that us with more practice, we have to ensure that we continue read with Creole more often. We do have a book called where you could read and write in a Creole. So if anybody wants to start that venture of read and write in a Creole, that's a nice book to start with, right? All right. Before we get into the meat of today's meeting or education session, I'd like to formally welcome everybody. We have Ms. Ivorine Bulwa, part of the People's Constitution Commission. She's a rep for Belize Network of NGOs. We have Mr. Michael Kemp. He's the substantive rep for the Creole Council, and Ms. Adelia Young, the alternate for the National Creole Council. We now have Ms. Adelia Young to come up. She's going to talk about the objectives of the session and introduction of the Constitution. Ms. Adelia.
Good morning. The People's Constitution Commission Act number 28 of 2022 gave 23 organizations 2 seats, a representative and an alternate, a chairman and a secretariat of 6 hardworking individuals from the Good Governance Unit. Gave them a legal mandate to 1, conduct a comprehensive review of the Belize Constitution, and 2, prepare and submit to the Prime Minister a final report on its findings of the review. This task was to be done over 18 months with a 6-month extension if deemed necessary. As commissioners coming from different organizations with our own agenda, we had to engage with each other in meetings and workshops in order to enhance capacity building for us commissioner to make decisions that will benefit the people of Belize. We all had to step down, step out, and make the love of country and people top priority. Now, before we, the PCC, People's Constitution Commission, can ask you, the public, what you want to change in the Belize Constitution, we are spending these 4 months up to October 2023 through a public lecture series that's going to provide greater awareness of our Constitution. We want you to know what is in the Constitution, how the Constitution affects every facet of our lives, and we want you to understand that the freedoms we enjoy also confer responsibilities on us. So, what is the Constitution? A Constitution should be, according to Ambassador Robert Leslie, a living, evolving instrument that captures the basic principles of good governance, the rule of law, civility in social, political, and economic interactions, and safeguards the rights of citizens and the integrity of the nation. The fundamental principles of the Belize Constitution are: 1, the fundamental rights of the people, including the rights of self-government, are derived from our God-given human nature. 2, all powers of self-government reside in and are derived from the official acts of the people of Belize, acting through their elected representatives. And 3, the Constitution of Belize distributes the power derived from the people of Belize at elections to officials who are entrusted to exercise that power for specific purposes, and provides the means by which those entrusted with power can be held accountable. Our Belizean Constitution came into effect on the 21st September 1981. It has 165 pages when I checked it, and divided into 13 chapters. The Commission has published, PCC has published booklets, and there are 4 of them: A Guide to the Belize Constitution, Fundamental Rights of the People of Belize, and the People's Constitution Commission and its commissioners, and 4, a brief summary of the Belize Constitution. These booklets were published in order to make the reading of the Constitution a bit easier for us to understand. The Commission is also conducting the public lecture series in collaboration with the 23 organizations. So with the National Creole Council, the PCC has set up today's event, where we have our very own Mr. Ed Usher discussing what we would call Chapter 2, the protection of fundamental rights and freedom. Later on, we can ask for other topics of the Constitution. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adelia. So in a nutshell, that basically explained the Constitution. You could access the Constitution online. And as mentioned, I think everybody got a book when they came in, a brief summary of the Belize Constitution, Volume 1. I thought I mentioned, I welcome Ms. Irene Bola, but I didn't capture Ms. Maria Zamani. My apologies, she's the zone leader for here, and to all her staff who accompany her and setting up today's session. I'd like to welcome you all to today's event, and for assisting us to carry out today's educational session. I now call on Mr. Mike Kemp, our Vice President, as well as our representative on the commission to do an introduction of our speaker for today.
Good morning, everyone. Morning, everybody. So very happy to see you today, and we're so very happy to have Mr. Ed Osher with us this morning. Just to give a brief background about Mr. Osher, first of all, he is a citizen of Belize, a Belizean boy, born and raised here. Mr. Osher is a graduate of Wesley College here in Belize City. Any other Wesley graduates here? All right, want to make some nice for yourself, Wesley. Whew, the phone they act like me sometimes. He also attended the Royal Military Academy in the UK. Mr. Osher holds a bachelor's degree in law from the University of Guyana and a master's of law legislative drafting from the University of the West Indies, Clearfield, Barbados. Mr. Osher is also an adjunct lecturer at Wesley Junior College in Belize City, where he lectures in public law and legal systems. He also lectures at Corozal Junior College in constitutional and public law and legal systems. Mr. Osher was an officer in the Belize Defense Force, where he served for 8 years. He was a magistrate for approximately 15 years and held court in every magistrate's court in the country of Belize. He served as a draftsman at the Surgeon's office and subsequently as the legal officer for the Department of General Sales Tax for 5 years. At present, Mr. Osher is the legal officer for the Belize Ports Authority. Mr. Osher is married, has 4 children, and resides right here in the beautiful city of Belize. Give Mr. Osher a round of applause, please.
You ready? I could borrow the stand. Yeah, the stand on it. The leg. You could borrow. Okay.
I just strong well love FM stand. That's all.
Thank you.
You could just kind of little. Yeah, so there the audience. Yep. All right.
Good to go?
You good?
Good.
All right. Está bien. Mr. Osher, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for that very kind introduction. What we will do... Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Good? Yeah, good? All right, straight? Good. Yes, thanks for having me. I have been to several areas of the country presenting on a similar topic, preamble, rule of law, and the fundamental rights. But even though I am supposed to present primarily on the rule of law and the fundamental rights, I find that doing these presentations I did in Belmopan on July the 7th, the prisons on the 21st of July, Orange Walk on the 28th, and Corozal on the 29th. And I have found that the object is to inform. I already see lawyers in the audience, and so they would have definitely been informed. But this is for persons who do not understand what obtains in the Belize Constitution. In several of the presentations that I have done, we hear that it is in a 90% that persons are not familiar with the Belize Constitution. So it is from that perspective that I present when I do these presentations, that persons do not understand. And it makes sense. On one of the occasions, the chairman of the People's Constitutional Commission, Mr. Chanona, had said that he had visited Barbados a few weeks ago, or a month ago, and that when he learned in Barbados that Jamaica and Barbados were going through a similar process of looking at the Constitution to see if there need to be any changes, amendments, adaptations, etc. And what he said he found with Jamaica and Barbados at this conference was that we Belize are in a unique position because we are going around presenting to our people so they understand what, like I said, obtains in the Constitution, which makes sense. Because if the majority of the members of the country do not or are not familiar with the Belize Constitution, then it will not make sense that when the next phase comes up in October, persons will be able to objectively make propositions for amendments or changes or whatever if necessary. So, what is the Constitution? Ms. Young did a very good presentation of what a Constitution is. Just a few minor adjustments to what Ms. Young said as it relates to the Belize Constitution. Yes, the Belize Constitution came into effect on the 21st of September 1981. It has 163 pages, 13 parts. So just a small change. Ms. Young said chapters, but the Constitution itself is chapter 4 of the laws of Belize. So just a slight adjustment there. It has 13 parts, 145 sections, and 4 schedules. Now, this would be pointless for those of you who do not understand. And so we have to talk a little bit about that. Some persons, especially my students that I lecture, rightfully as stated at the Wesley Junior College in public law, they say how you use a piece of statute. So let us go there for a few moments. The way how you look and find areas in a piece of legislation, in this instance, the Belize Constitution. It is, as I say to my students, similar to how you navigate the Bible. The Bible has 2 books, the 2 Testaments, the Old and New. It has several books, Deuteronomy, Genesis, and then each book has chapters, and then each chapter has verses. Well, nothing too difficult with our legislation and the Constitution in particular. The Constitution is chapter 4 of the laws of Belize. It has, like I said, 13 parts, and then the parts have sections. And so if someone says to you, what is section 2, part 1, section 2? Once you understand that it works similar to the Bible, then there you go. It's easy to navigate. So just one basic thing there for when you are going through it on your own. Like I said, for those of you who do not know, there was a time when I never know either. The preamble. What is the preamble? The preamble is that introductory part of the Constitution, not necessarily a legal legislated part of the Constitution, but it's nevertheless it's in the Constitution document. And what the preamble does is it introduces to persons reading it what to expect inside, what the Belizean people want to be in the Belize Constitution. And it speaks about social justice, it speaks about democracy, it speaks about the supremacy of God, it speaks about the right to property, it speaks up until 2008 or 9, if I remember correctly, it did not include the indigenous rights of the people of Belize. And so it was, the Constitution was amended, the preamble was amended to include indigenous rights. Now, before we get to the juicy part, we want to look at one more subtopic, the supremacy clause. Now, we have to understand what the supremacy clause is, or else the rest of the Constitution will make no sense, really. You know, I got no teeth, because the supremacy clause is what gives the Constitution teeth. It also keeps the legislative branch in check. Now, that's another little thing that we need to talk a few seconds about. I say the legislative branch for some persons here who might not be familiar with administrative or constitutional law. What that have to do with this? Well, the executive branch, as the word executive execute, they execute the law. They proposes laws. The executive branch includes the cabinet, controller, customs, commissioner, police, the executive part of the government. The legislative branch, from the word legislate, it creates laws. The legislature creates laws. And then the final is the judicial branch, which interprets the law, or say what the law they say. There is a presenter that will be coming who will deal with that part specifically, and so I just wanted you to get a brief understanding of what it is. But back to the supremacy clause. The supremacy clause is found at section 2 of the Belize Constitution, part 1. The one there, we're going to clear with, we could remember part 1, because part 1 only have 2 sections. Section 1 and section 2, that done right there. Part 1, in section 1, the most important section in the Constitution to my mind, because it says what Belize is. Section 1 define Belize from the proud we all know in our anthem to whole Sarstoon, from all the way out San Pedro to out west of the Benke border. It also speaks to the 1859 and the 1893 treaties. And then in this, remember I told you that the Constitution has 4 schedules. In Schedule 1, because in the first, in Section 1, it will small to include all the islands and so on. So when you go to section, when you go to the first schedule, it tells you about what Belize includes, all the keys from San Pedro and Gaff Key and Rendezvous Key and right down south. So that one easy. Part 1, 2 sections. Now we go to the second section, and that's the one where we want to talk about the supremacy clause. The supremacy clause is also known as the pro tanto voidness clause, and it is very important, like I said. What is so important about Section 2? Section 2 say, and I will paraphrase, this constitution shall be the supreme law of Belize, and any other law that is inconsistent with this constitution shall, to the extent of the inconsistency, be void. Who make the law? The legislative branch, the parliament. Why Section 2 so important? Because Section 2 say Parliament can't make any law when they feel like. Whenever Parliament, the legislature makes a law, it must not contravene, abridge, abrogate, violate, talk bad bout, make the Constitution give X. It must be in line with the Belize Constitution. This Constitution shall be the supreme law of Belize, and any other law that is inconsistent with this Constitution shall, to the extent of the inconsistency, be void. One other little thing come up there now. They're not just words. The Constitution is the supreme law of Belize. We got that right. And any law that Parliament creates that is inconsistent, we got that too. But it adds in it, shall, to the extent that the inconsistency, be void. That means that not the whole law will get thrown out. That only the part where contravene the Constitution, that part shall be surgically removed. But you don't want to throw out the whole of it. And people say, well, yeah, but it's always that alone words, you know. This Constitution thing, alone talking. Well, the judicial branch, as I said to you a while ago, interprets the law, and this Constitution, many of the fundamental rights have been cleared up by the court. The Supreme Court, well, now the High Court, again amended. The High Court, who is the jealous guardian of this Belize Constitution. There is a famous case that the then Chief Justice Kenneth Benjamin looked at. And I'm giving you this example to show you that when the Constitution said this Constitution shall be, etc., etc., in Section 2, it is not just words. There's a famous case with Caleb Orozco, the Unibam case, as it is known, when he took to the court the fact that Section 53 of the Criminal Code, Chapter 101 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, violated his constitutional right to privacy or privacy. And when Kenneth Benjamin, Chief Justice as he then was, looked at Section 53 in the Criminal Code, any other law that is inconsistent, Criminal Code Chapter 101, that comes under the subset of any other law. And Section 53, that is the area that Orozco was arguing about, or Unibam, Section 53, and the part that the unnatural act part, whatever that he says was violating his right, that was what Chief Justice Benjamin looked at. I said all of that to just point out to you supremacy clause, not the entire thing, not even the chapter, not even the section, just a part that offended Orozco. And we will come back to that case when we look at the redress section presently, because that will also come back to show how important these sections are. They are not just words. The High Court of this country has said that certain interpretations must be given to ensure that rights are protected. So the Supremacy Clause, that is the clause that, if you want to say it in a Creole, check ties the government, make sure the government stays, the legislature stays on the right path. Now, the main juicy part of the thing now, fundamental rights. Fundamental rights, or the protection of these rights, these are found in Part 2 of the Belize Constitution. And the part that we want to look at are those sections 3 to 19. Now, when you look at the redress section, and we look at it presently, it says sections 3 to 19 inclusive. And people say, why a lot of people and then draftsman like myself like put words in a thing? Why inclusive mean necessary there in a part 2? 3 to 19 inclusive. Well, if inclusive was not presented there, then it might be from 4 to 18. One good lawyer could go to court and say, you know, got no right under 19 bars because 19 are included. So why I'm saying this is that when you look at the Constitution, you look at words, and these words have meaning, and you question them. 3 to 19 inclusive mean that 3 and 19 included. They're not 4 to 18, but it might not look like anything. It might just be like, why inclusive have to be there? Because it is necessary for interpretation. Now, part 2 protects those fundamental rights that we have, those inalienable rights, those rights that are God-given. The first 2 lines of the preamble says that Belize shall be a country which acknowledges the supremacy of God. That brings up another story when I go around the district there. The supremacy of God, that in itself not discriminatory, Ms. Oja. Which God? Well, the Constitution never say which God. It said the supremacy of God. It doesn't say there's one God, but people look upon him from different angles. The Catholic, the Methodist, Islam, the Buddhists, the Hindus have many. But in the Constitution, framers, the persons who framed this Constitution, said the supremacy of God. Whatever you take God to be, then the supremacy of God. Somebody said, but Mr. Osha, isn't Belize, where they go in secularity? They know a secular country. What secular depends on what perspective you put on the word secular. Belize Constitution says we acknowledge the supremacy of God. Secular perhaps, because the government cannot say which religion shall be our religion. In that context, yes, that's where secularism might come in. But if we say that we are a nation that acknowledges the supremacy of God and leave it at that, nobody gonna make no law where say, all right, from here go back Methodist that the religion of the country, or Catholic, then that would be a problem. Why? Because it would go back and violate the same Constitution itself. When we look at these fundamental rights, we see that we have freedom of religion. And the freedom of religion says that a person can have whichever religion they want. A person could change religion. A person can propagate his religion. He could go out, go announce the religion. But he can't force nobody to be your religion. You can talk to them and try, say to them, this religion is the better one, why you not can join me? And the person could join your religion. And if tomorrow you want to change back, you could change back. The Constitution guarantees that. That is protected. Now I just want to look at section 3, because I said to you part 2, section 3 to 19 inclusive. And this the weapon I forget my next 2 eye there. Can't read. So I have to find my next 2 eye. I find this interesting today that, you know, I'm not saying that I am not at liberty when I had visited the other areas to do my presentation, but this one I feel a lot more comfortable because it's the Creole Council. And if I want to talk Creole, yeah, that. So I feel okay that I had today where I could go in and my Creole as broad as I want. If we look at section 3 then, it says, whereas every person in Belize is entitled to the fundamental rights and freedoms of the individual, but with rights come certain responsibilities and obligations. No right is absolute. That would be a preposterous proposition. Oh, you have no right that is absolute. with rights comes responsibilities. You have a right to these fundamental rights, provided that your right not tread per minds. One old man he say your right to throw a punch in where my nose begin. Unless of course I waive the right, if I'm a boxer, then you could do me whatever you want in the ring. But your right to throw a punch done where my nose begin. Period. So with age comes wisdom. But listen to how the Constitution says that. It says you have these fundamental rights and freedoms, the right, whatever your race, place, or origin, your political opinions, color, creed, or sex. But listen to these other words. But subject to respect for the rights and freedoms of others and for the public interest, to each of the following. Look at pause, they leave it. So we have these rights. But as I said, with rights come responsibilities, and they're not absolute. So then, there are certain limitations. And the Constitution provides limitations to these rights. For example, when you see words like subject to, notwithstanding, provided that, you have to take 1 second look when you say that word there, because some limitations they come. They are not delimiting, they limit. So what are these rights and freedoms? Well, the Constitution says at 3A, the right to life, to liberty, to security of the person, the protection of the law, freedom of conscience, that includes religion, expression, assembly, and association, the right to life, your right to family life, personal privacy, the privacy of your home, etc., and the protection from arbitrary deprivation of your property. Now, yes, you have, as people say, well, I have my right, but I got my freedom of speech. Yeah, you got freedom of speech. You got a right to say most of what you want. But you can't say something about me with a lie. The Constitution provides for that. The Constitution says you have a right to property. But when the Income Tax Act and the GST Act say you have to pay 12.5% or 25% of your salary as taxes, you can't go to the court to say, hold up, I'm not paying no GST, because money, when I looking at the Interpretation Act the last time, money the property, and the Constitution say you can't, I have a right to my property. Yes, you got a right to your property, but the same Constitution will tell you got a right to property, tell you, here we go on. You got a right to property, boss. The Interpretation Act defines what a property to include money, sorry. But the Constitution says you have a right to property, but if one law make we say you want to pay so much income tax and so much GST and so much property tax, you can't go fight the court and say, well, I'm going to pay then because I got a right to my property. Because the Constitution itself makes provisions, provided that notwithstanding subject to shall not be deemed to be a contravention of this Constitution. Go on to say their words after our right to know by we got certainly limitation. We got a right to life. We have a right to life. To my mind, one of the most powerful rights, the right to life. But even the right to life has limitations. The Constitution said that if you, for a capital offense, have been sentenced to death, that shall not be deemed to be unconstitutional. That not deemed to be unconstitutional. And to ensure, because if I remember when I looked at the 1981 Constitution, the first one, 1981 Constitution, it did not, Section 2 did not have a subsection 2. It was a straight up, as far as I remember, this Constitution shall be the Supreme Constitution, etc., etc. It did not have a subsection 2. A subsection 2 was placed in the Constitution when it was amended to say that if the Constitution is amended by using the proper process in section 69, which deals with alterations, then that amendment shall not be deemed to be unconstitutional. So, just should in case somebody go in a court and say, well, why this amendment where the legislature can do is unconstitutional, section 2, subsection 2 say, once the proper process for altering the constitution was done, then that amendment cannot be deemed unconstitutional. Make I read it for you now. Because I don't want nobody go say Mr. Osha say. Mr. Osha read it. Listen. Section 2 says, as I said, this constitution shall be the supreme law of Belize, etc., etc. But listen to subsection 2, which, and in the constitution, it's right on in the marginal notes. It was amended in 2011. It was the 11th amendment of 2011. It says, the words other law, remember I tell you on any other law that is inconsistent, it says the words other law occurring in subsection 1 above do not include a law to alter any of the provisions of this constitution which is passed by the National Assembly in conformity with section 69. The same one way I just tell you now. So once you confirm to the requirements of section 69, which tells you how to alter or amend this constitution, that cannot be deemed to be unconstitutional. But let me come back to the fundamental rights now. From time to time, any thing come up, and then I would feel terrible to not have just wasted, but taken a few seconds to deal with some of these, so that it is better when you read it on your own and you look at it and you try to understand this very, very important document. We have the right, like I said, to your property, money being property, but when people hear property, most of the time, people think about their house, buy my house and lot. That's the biggest property. And people say, I own that, I got absolute ownership of my property. You own your property, but for the loyal amongst us and persons who are informed as it relates to property law, you will know that ownership, what we think was created by I own this, that even that is limited. And you might say, what will you talk about, Mr. Osha? Yes, it's limited. No pay your tax, and you say, I'm to it after 5-6 years. No pay your land tax to Belize City. You see in the newspaper, these lads they pay their tax and they bushy, and so this we have one action directly. Come in that the city council and deal with the thing. So even that, one other thing that came up as it relates to fundamental right, or the right to vote. The right to vote are the next one. Persons and students that I have taught over the last 8 to 10 years, public law, which includes some areas of constitutional law, is Mr. Osha, what about my right to vote? That's our fundamental right. That we discussed today, and that we discuss sometimes when we're dealing with rights in my classroom. Mr. Osha, what about the right to vote? And I say, what about the right to vote? What about the right to vote? That's not our fundamental right. I say perhaps it should be like the right to work. So then, that's not our fundamental right. I say, where is the right to vote located? The right to vote is located at section 92, if I remember correctly, 92. Where are your fundamental rights located? I just want to say, between section 3 to 19, section 3 to 19, your fundamental right, section 92, your right to vote. How that sound to you? That sound like that fundamental right? Can't be a fundamental right. So they argue, well, we disagree, and I say yes, that is a yes, and I will not be disagreeable with your right to disagree. But it is not a fundamental right. And so someone in Belmopan, when I was in Belmopan on my first presentation, as it related to the right to vote, that would be a proposal. That would be a proposal if you want it to be a fundamental right, but it is not, in my view, a fundamental right. One, it is not found in part 2, but let me give you a few more examples why I believe it is not a fundamental right as we are speaking. I'm not saying that I do not think it should be one. Of course it should be. But why I say that not a fundamental right, one, it is not in part 2, and look at this. Where you have a right to life, your right to life is one of the inalienable ones, save where the Constitution provides otherwise. Your right to life, as soon as you're born, you have a right to life. That automatic. That is a fundamental right. I tell my student, when you born, you have a right to vote. When you come out of your mother's womb and you are born, you have a right to life automatically, immediately, just by you, virtue of you having been created by God and you they are now. And then spank her, you scream the first time, you have a right to life. As a matter of fact, some religions, the Catholic religions and some other religions say you have one right for conception. Not even when you're born, they don't wait till you're born, you don't got a right. Go then, so that even make it stiffer and stronger. But when you born, all right, boy, you're living Queen Square, okay, or you're going to right for vote now. So when you're 1, you could go vote. Or the next election, no. So where is the fundamentally about that? I don't argue that it shouldn't be, you know. I'm just showing you it is not. Why? Because you have to fulfill certain conditions precedent. You have to be a citizen of Belize. Your fundamental rights, you don't have to be a citizen of Belize. It says every person, make we look at the word, can't we make it up? Whereas every person in Belize, that are the first 4 words of the fundamental rights, section 3. Whereas every person in Belize, 3, 4, 5 words. Every person in Belize are entitled to these fundamental rights. Where section 92 say, every citizen of Belize or any member of Commonwealth, after having lived in Belize for X amount of time, shall be entitled to vote. Now, not everybody that Belize could vote, but everybody that Belize are entitled to these fundamental rights. That's one big difference right there. You have to 18, you have to vote, register in a division, you have to register, you have to vote in another division. Where the fundamental right there for that? But where is it? Where is the fundamentally? It is an acquired right. And perhaps in October, when the presentations are made, well, I want this change, and I don't want that change, and I want this come out, and I want that left in, I want to put in this. Then those might be, then that might be an area that needs attention as it relates to the fundamentality of that right. But as it is an acquired right. You acquire the right to vote after having fulfilled certain conditions precedent. So these are, to my mind, these rights are very important. You have to look at them, you have to see, because remember, as was said earlier by one of the speakers, that these presentations are for information purposes, and then the next phase is where persons will be able to make submissions as to what they think should be changed or kept, etc. This area of the Constitution, because of time, I can only give you certain basics as it relates to them, but at least when we leave here, we will understand a little bit about the preamble, a little bit about the supremacy clause, which is extremely important. We will understand some of these fundamental rights, but what you will leave here knowing that way for finding. I once heard from one of my professors when I was studying for my master's degree, he said, it is good to have a good memory when it comes to the law. He said, but the good liar that the one where not necessarily have the best memory, but know where to find the thing, know where to find the information. I am blessed with a little bit of both, I think. Now, like I said, time, and so I say a couple persons, they look on a phone and a watch. That means you talk a little bit too much, Mr. Usher. We want to get at it. We talk about the juicy spot. We come out at the juiciest spot now. And this is the place where, if you have any questions as it relates to these fundamental rights, the supremacy clause, or anything that we have discussed this morning, time is not on our side as usual, but I will seek to discuss or explain any queries or questions that we might have. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you so much for coming.
As it relates to the fundamental rights, can you please express a little bit more on exactly where those fundamental rights come in and when they start at birth? Is the birth certificate a part of that, and how it is applied?
Okay.
In the sense that the Constitution is almost like, I'll simplify this in terms of football. When I join a football club, we have these rules we apply to this football club. When we become a citizen of a country, we have these rules we apply to citizens of the country. And when you are birthed in that country that you are eventually a citizen of, or whether you are a citizen at birth and why you're a citizen at birth, please express that a little bit deeper for me.
Okay, as it relates to citizenship, there's another presenter who will be dealing with citizenship, but citizenship, the Constitution says who are citizens, how you become a citizen, etc. But as I was saying earlier, if you look at the fundamental rights, so you go to part 2, and the fundamental rights, as I said, are found between sections 3 to 19, including section 3 and 19. It says every person, whereas every person in Belize have these rights. So let's say you're a visitor, because if these words were not here, every person in Belize. So what happens if you are a visitor to Belize, you're a tourist? Would you not have these rights? So that's the reason why I was saying this Constitution says whereas every person in Belize, the tourist, the immigrant that is, I don't want to say illegal alien, but an immigrant who is not undocumented immigrant in the country will have these rights. Every person in Belize will have these fundamental rights, these protections as it relates to those rights. But the voting, then that would be citizens and right.
Hello?
Yes.
How does these fundamental rights to life,
Right.
the first law of nature,
Right.
self-preserve, do we have to claim them so that they become ours, like you were stating,
They
or are they given with a birth certificate? Or please try to clear that for me.
No,
It's not clear.
These rights are rights that you are born with. You have these rights. If you look at the words here in part 2 of the Belize Constitution, it does not say rights that are given to you by the Constitution. It says protection of fundamental rights and freedoms. If the Constitution is protecting your fundamental rights and freedoms, that means you don't have them already. They are only encoded here.
Okay, my private property, which includes my body,
Right.
my children if I have children,
Right.
and every other thing, the car that moves me around and every
Right.
other thing. Now, those things, when I license them, they become the property of the state. Am I correct?
Well, they are your property, but there are limitations.
No. I want a straight answer, please.
Yes.
If I register a car, the city council transport, that property title is there.
That is your property.
But it's controlled
But your right
by the
to the
laws
property-
it's controlled by the laws of that.
Well, that is like I said, the Constitution, and that's why someone was saying in Orange Rock the other night. So it looked like the Constitution gave you a right with one hand and take it back with the next.
That's exactly what I'm claiming right now.
Well, because no right is absolute, and it can't be. No right is absolute. So I understand the point. I understand the point that you're making, but the property is yours, but it is not absolute. The Constitution itself. So that would be.
It's only absolute when you make that claim and notify all the present institutions, which includes the legal, to treat the four parts of our system. When you give them notice that you're taking claim. In other words, you're becoming of age, you're becoming knowledgeable of your rights. And when you know your rights, you begin to claim your rights. And as you claim your rights, these things that are vague are becoming distinct.
But you have the right with limitations as provided by the Constitution. The Constitution provides what? The Constitution, I'm just here to present what is in the Constitution.
And I'm not fighting that. You're presenting that, and I'm respectful
Thank
of
you.
that.
Thank you
but I'm
very
actually
much.
asking you to help.
Yes. So you have these rights, but with certain limitations as are provided for by the Constitution.
I stand here because I have stood in a particular way in the United States and currently in Belize in a particular way.
Okay.
I have declared certain rights mine. I have taken back certain rights, and I'm even on the verge of returning certain rights to the state so that we can keep the state in a just manner. Because our constitution should be working for us. And currently, it may not be working for us.
And so that is one of the objectives, I presume, of this Constitutional Commission. It is for, if something is not working, then in the next phase of this journey towards amending, leaving it the way it is, maybe at the end of it, when it goes to the referendum, people say, you know what, but I mean, left it as it is. We don't want to change nothing. And if the majority at the referendum say yes, we left it as it is, then it might just remain as it is. Or maybe one of your recommendations are heard, and I say, boy, you know what? Yes, this makes sense. Make we amend the Constitution to provide for that. So in the next phase, when these are presented, perhaps one of those could be one of the amendments that can be made. And so that is the objective of this whole journey. It is, I am here presenting on my part as it relates to fundamental rights. Then Dickie Bradley will come another day to present on something. The different presenters will come, and that is so that persons are aware of what obtains. And then, like you said, you see how you say, well, I think that this is supposed to change. Okay, so through the Creole Council, which has representation on the Commission, perhaps that is one of the amendments that might be suggested in the next phase.
Well, another reason why I'm going here is because we started to look at changes such as constitutions and other changes that are affecting the population globally.
Okay.
At the Durban conference, which Belize was present, which has now been ratified enough times, and we're now in the age for the permanent forum for African descendants, where evidence such as what we're here doing, giving, learning, teaching, so that people can function responsibly like you shared.
Yes.
There's a lot of work to be done, and it is just my suggestion right now that maybe Belize is not even ready for a constitutional reform. There's so much more education that has to be done.
Yes.
Even the people that we have representing us currently needs to be sat down properly.
You see, so that is a suggestion right there that perhaps, we don't need to change. So that is a suggestion.
have several questions, and they're
Yes.
not necessarily for you. They're for the record, but they need to be answered. And the primary one actually is, why are we doing this? That hasn't been shared. I've asked commissioners, including the zone leader here, Ms. Zabane. I've asked some NKC representatives, and everybody assumes, even you use the word presume. You presume the objective is, you presume the purpose is. Nobody seems to know why are we doing this process. So that's a question, and apparently it's only the Prime Minister who can answer it. So this is my question to Prime Minister Briceño. Why are we doing this? Why are we going through this process? I want to also bring your attention, everyone's attention. I listen to all that you say, but I listen with the backdrop behind you. It says participate, write your constitution,
Right.
which suggests the constitution is wrong. And I raise the question again, is that why we're doing it? Have we been operating with a wrong constitution for 42 years? And the word in there, because you said, and it is true in law, words matter. Every
Right.
single word that is used. Pay attention that it says, write your constitution. Oh, this only belongs to some of us? Your means it is your constitution, not mine. Your means it's yours, not mine when I'm speaking. Our is inclusive of everyone. Those things are critical. It then means that every one of us should be a part of it. If we
Right.
use words like your, it means maybe it is only for the lawyers or the technicians or the academics. Follow?
But you are here, right? So I guess
I did not see that backdrop.
The-
I'm listening to what you're
Yeah.
saying against that backdrop, and that backdrop says a lot of things that are different from what you are saying.
okay.
That's the point I'm trying to make there. My third position is, I want to know if there are PCC representatives for educational institutions and educators. They are? Because I'd like to know who they are. Because schools, everybody, PCC representatives.
1 minute. There's a
Well, apparently somebody.
There's a document that has all there's a document from the PCC, if I remember correctly, that has all the members and who they represent. So
I don't have that document.
okay, that is a
and
free
that's-
document.
And
Yeah.
that's a recommendation here. You should also have versions of the existing constitution. I believe 2021 was the last version of the constitution, the updated. And even if it's a few, you should have those
Yes.
4 documents that Ms. Young referred to that
Yes.
came out of the PCC should also be available at every one of these sessions so people have them to refer
Yes,
to.
they do have it. I don't know if it's not.
No,
if it's
they
not
have
yet,
the
but
brief summary.
Okay.
That's not all 4 documents. And the Constitution, I didn't hear that being mentioned as one of the documents. The full Constitution. I understand that, Ms. Young, but I think you have to hear what it is I'm saying. When you come to sessions like this as you're referring, it would be good to have a few of those documents so I could open to that path and that section. That is what education is about. Okay? So that's what I want you to hear. And then my number 4, you keep referring to something that should be happening in October, a next step or a next stage.
Right.
So
There'll be a phase where persons will, like I said in the beginning, the chairman had stated at several of these presentations that when he visited a conference in Barbados and Jamaica was there, they said that Belize is doing it the right way. trying to make people aware of what obtains in the Constitution, because what they did was they got a bunch of liars in a room, came up with a Constitution, and realized afterwards that nobody contributed, nobody understood, the majority of the person didn't know in the Constitution, and so we have taken this step, the Belize People's Constitutional Commission, to try and inform first and then get the people to make the suggestions to be included in the Constitution. So that's my understanding. I'm not a member of the People's Constitutional Commission. I'm just here presenting, but that is my understanding.
That might be conflict of interest, eh? But one recommendation I do want to make. Schools are reopening now as of Monday, the junior colleges, universities, and high schools and primary schools. And I asked about the PCC representation of educational institutions and schools, because what you're doing should be happening in schools. They should be focused on that social studies aspect and going through the entire Constitution, one, and two, that what we're doing here, shame on us, because even the Minister of Education has talked about the use of technology. You have to have ongoing schooling using media. You should pay for some, or government system should have, so that it can be YouTube. You see the session you're doing? Would go so much further if this was being streamed on YouTube. So every section of the Constitution then is available to those people who don't come. We all know that not very many people come to face-to-face sessions. We know that. But if you really want people to participate, make the information available and use technology. Even our Minister of Education has talked about we can't regress and go back to only paper-based and in-person.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Dr. McKay, for your excellent questions, and I would like to go through them in order of perhaps starting with the last question or the last recommendation that you made. I would like to introduce the company that is here streaming live. All our information is being streamed live on the Facebook page of the PCC Commission. Yesterday, we were at the Belize Defense Force, and it was streamed live to all the soldiers around the country. Every event is recorded, and all your comments will be recorded and given to the People's Constitution. That is why we're here. So that takes care of the first question or recommendation. So thank you for that. It's important. The second part of it is our educators on board the commission. Yes, Dr. Christopher DeShield is there from the University of Belize, and Dr. Philip Castillo is there from the University of Belize. I am there from the churches and I am part of the Education Commission for Gamas, which runs a lot of schools. So there is, Miss Adela is there from the University of Belize. And so she's there from the Creole Council, but she is an educator, and I would like to give her that recognition in her own right. And so the education component is very important to this process. And what the government is speaking to with the Ministry of Education, I believe a memorandum of understanding has been signed with the Ministry of Education, because the government is undergoing at this time curriculum reform. And this is now being inserted in the curriculum reform, as well as many events that are planned. In fact, we had one in June at the St. Catherine's Auditorium that encompassed a lot of teachers. So our teachers and our students are definitely a huge part of this. The last, to answer your last recommendation, is that you don't know who the People's Constitution Commission. I believe you just received a booklet. Who is the PCC? I'm sorry, I must make an apology on behalf of the People's Constitution Commission to you and everyone here, because we do have an excellent constitution reform booklet. A constitution booklet that really details the sections. It gives you all the different sections with the levers of power. I will get that to your Creole Council representative, Mr. Michael Kemp, to be distributed among the Creole Council. It was not ready in print for today, but I assure you that we will get as many as you ask us to deliver through Ms. Adela and Mr. Kemp. I hope I tried to capture all of your questions, Dr. McKay, except for, the one that you're posing there. But I will say this, though, as far as the question you posed to the Prime Minister, certainly he can answer that. But I do want to say that now that we're in this boat of constitutional reform, this is perhaps one of the most unique opportunities we have been given as a nation to make a better Belize for our children. It's really unique. I have had the privilege of attending most of the sessions that we have engaged in thus far, and I can tell you that the excitement, they inspire me, because this is a lot of work. I want to recognize the members that are here, Ms. Bulwa and Ms. Adela, that are here, because we have sat in so many meetings and we have gone around the country to hear, because really I'm here in the capacity as a listener, because what you bring forth is inspiring, because you are now telling us how to make this nation better. So I would be more interested in what would be the outcome of this exercise rather than what started the exercise, because what can come forth from this can be so instrumental in leaving a better nation for those who will come after us. But I thank you, your excellent questions, Dr. McKay, and I hope I clarified some of them for you. Thank you.
Mr. Presenter, it's so nice to have you in front of me lecturing. Our friendship goes way, way back to a time when I was younger. I would like to make a comment on opening the national anthem in Creole and the national prayer in Creole. The national anthem in Creole is not so good. It is difficult, sometimes almost impossible, to take the good poetry and put it into Creole or any language. So that's one of the problems with the national anthem. The national anthem is a very great poetic and musical composition. We need to get that done in Creole also. I don't know that if we have anybody who can do that in Creole. Maybe we do. I've been amazed at the knowledge and the competency of people that I know personally, have been friends with, and they are so competent in Creole that they write dictionaries and all. Next thing, and I say this because I am qualified to say it. Let me tell you that people who don't really know me, as they look at me, figure that if you ask me, what's your first language? That I would say Spanish. No, I tell them, and I tell this to foreigners and Belizeans alike. My first language is Creole. From the time I was months old, the first songs that I heard in my ears were Creole songs, not Spanish songs. As a matter of fact, my grandfather, maternal grandfather, who spoke only Spanish, maybe he spoke one or two other languages, but he would pull my hair because he would ask me a question in Spanish and I would answer in Creole. That's the way it is with languages. I grew up hearing Creole, and my friends, I grew up on Wagner's Lane, was born in Wagner's Lane. which is a heavily Creole area then in 1938, probably still is. So that's what I learned as an infant and as a child. Next thing, I'm so glad that you got the idea out that the Constitution is really an expression of our culture, our civilization, Belize civilization. And I would like to say that I know for a fact that you don't have to be a lawyer to understand law. I'm not saying that you will understand all of law, and I'll tell you, Mr. Asha, if somebody sues me, I'm going to run to you to defend me in court. But as far as reading the law, I can read the law as good as anybody else because I can read, I am logical, my training, intellectual training is in the most logical study that man has done, philosophy. That's my main study. But I also read ancient Greek and Latin as a younger person. And I've read volumes in the English language. So I know. Therefore, when I was appointed ombudsman way back then, they wanted to know if I needed a lawyer in my office. I said, hell no, I can read the English language. I can read law. And the man who came all the way from New Zealand to tutor me, Sir John Robertson, said the same thing. And he himself considered at the time the best ombudsman throughout the world. He backed me up, and I have lived according to that proposal, that I know how to read the English language good enough to write a report to the National Assembly saying what my investigation reveals. And I wish, that ombudsmen after me had kept that good advice. You don't need to be a lawyer to be an ombudsman. Just read the law. But the main work of the ombudsman is investigating. The facts don't lie. With common sense, you can read most of the facts. But when you need legal advice that must go to court, then consult your legal friend. I run to you, Mr. Osha. So one of the things that I want to point out regarding I've said this publicly, but I want to say it as often as I can, that the pillars of the preamble are 6. I think we ought to add 2 more. They're already, in essence, contained in the previous 6, but we have to make this precisely understood by every and anybody. The 7th pillar is diversity. Belize is a culturally, religiously, ethnically diverse nation. So we need to exclude no one. Then the next one, just almost the same as diversity, is tolerance. Everybody who lives in Belize, no matter what you believe, provided what you believe does not entitle you to harm other people, your idea should be respected and listened to by everybody, but respected. So, respect and tolerance and diversity. Thank you.
Thank you. It's such a joy to have you present with us, Mr. Paul, as a former ombudsman. And actually that is an excellent recommendation coming from you, especially who has served in that capacity and various other government capacities. I want to speak to the fact of the recording. Everything is being recorded, and that is the reason that we're here with our video persons, because this now gets transcribed, and that is why what you say is very important. I just ask you to, just curtail what you say a little bit, because we want as many people on record. That is how we're going to get your voices into the report that will be given to the Prime Minister. So those are going to be recorded, Mr. Paul, and they are always excellent opinions. Like I said, that Ombuds office could be much more utilized. Thank you.
Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? There you go. I'm George Farrar from the Evangelical Association, and I wanted to raise two concerns about two things that we might possibly put into the Constitution to limit foreign influence over Belize and to limit government exercise of power during emergencies. The Constitution is consisted of checks and balances. So would it be possible to make a provision in the Constitution that would prevent Belize from signing international treaties and agreements without approval from the legislature? Because too often we find out that woke agendas, foreign ideas about family, marriage, sex, gender, all those things coming from the outside, that Belize is obliged to go by them when Belizeans haven't even voted on it. So is there a way to put in the Constitution a way that we can require that no international agreement can override the Belizean Constitution and cannot override Belizean law? And I have another question after that.
The area of the Constitution that deals with I think it's part 4, that deals with the Senate. So perhaps what you are saying, perhaps that would be an area that might need to be amended as per your suggestion. But as it presently stands, the Senate is responsible or has the authority and the power to deal with international treaties. So that might be something that would need to be looked at, but that is already in there as one of the powers of the Senate. Secondly, the Interpretation Act of this country, which is Chapter 1. This is Chapter 4, Interpretation Act is Chapter 1. The Interpretation Act also provides, I think it's either Section 64 or 65, that says that when the court is interpreting statutes, it must always remember, and I'm paraphrasing, to look at the international obligations of Belize. So that is something interesting you're saying, and we see how it goes when that suggestion, like Ms. Zabane says, is being recorded and it will be transcribed, and then when it comes to the next phase, the actual submitting of these proposals, amendments, suggestions, etc., then perhaps that is one. But as it presently stands, the Constitution provides that the Senate has the authority as it relates to that. So it is already in there. Maybe like you are suggesting, maybe there might be, you could suggest some requirements that there is some amendment to the area that deals with the Senate, or perhaps even the Interpretation Act that already provides that we have to look at our obligation. But one other thing, nations, United Nations membership, etc., there is a very important thing as it relates, and as I recall, as it relates to treaties. There is a fundamental principle as it relates to treaty, and it's Latin. It says pacta sunt servanda, and in a Creole that means you must live up to your word. Whenever you make a treaty, you have to live up to those treaty obligations. So that is an interesting proposition, and hopefully it is taken into consideration. That's all I can say about that.
Well, I think that's another reason to put it in the Constitution, because that will mean that the Senate has given its word to the people that it will not sign a treaty without putting it before the legislature first.
Thank you, Pastor. And so also the churches will have, it's an excellent point. And I can just say that having been an ambassador myself, I am also understanding of international bodies and treaties that we sign. Only treaties that have been ratified are binding upon this nation. And our sovereignty still always trumps any treaty that would be inconsistent with the supreme law of the land. But we will note that, and you also will be having an opportunity to submit a document to us on behalf of them. Thank you for your suggestion. Thank you for your presence here today.
Can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
Okay. If 5 times in the current Constitution, it puts a limit on the law that it just stated, or the freedom or the right that it just stated. And this is in reference to the pandemic, okay? I think that because this is 5 times in the Constitution, the government took a lot of liberty in putting limitations on churches and other organizations that we later found out were not really necessary, but we did not have an avenue of appeal for. So, what it says 5 times in the current Constitution is nothing contained or done under the authority of any law shall be held to be inconsistent with or in contravention of the interests of defense, public safety, public order, public morality, or public health. Okay, so in other words, there are 5 sections of the Constitution can be overridden in case of a public health emergency. And that needs to be in there. But there needs to be limitations on that so that churches, for instance, can appeal and say, we want to meet and we want to present evidence of why we should meet at this time and stand up for our rights, because too often bars and restaurants were opening and churches were not able to. Is there a way to put into the Constitution a provision which allows appeal of government actions in times of emergencies and pandemics?
Again, as Ms. Dabane had said earlier, that is being recorded and it will be transcribed, and that could probably be one of those suggestions that goes up at the end. But yes, that's a very good concern. The section that if I understand correctly, that you're referring to is section 10, which deals with movement. One of the sections, you said 5 times, and the freedom of movement. Now that one, if you notice, like I said to you and you read those words, notwithstanding subject to, remember I told you those words, shall not be right. That is one of those instances when it limits that right. And so perhaps that can be taken into consideration.
I guess I'm just saying there should be a limitation on that limit, and there should be checks and balances on that limit, because it makes power over church meetings unlimited.
Thank you, Pastor. And I am your actual representative on the commission, so I take especially what you're recommending here to heart. And as you know, each stakeholder on that commission, the book that was passed around, will be submitting a document to the commission based on what you and your the constituencies are recommending, including the Creole Council. And so let's get to Ms. Pitts, because we're out of time. You go ahead. You want to go ahead? Go ahead, Mr. Paul, quickly. Okay.
The former Attorney General said, no right is absolute. And I contradicted her publicly. I said, oh yes, there is one right that is absolute. Freedom of conscience. Nobody, not you, not government, not the highest powers on earth can take away my freedom of conscience. That allows me to be Catholic or evangelical or Methodist or Mennonite or gay or whatever according to my conscience.
Good morning or good. I step up now when You know, we Belizeans walk with a belly in our hand, right? But sometimes I feel that when you're protecting certain things, come hungry, we cannot come to a peace, right? Friends aside, basically, I want to say that when it comes to Belize Constitution, right? And as lawyers, we have a little adage, he who has himself an attorney for a lawyer has a counsel for a fool, or some other way, no? So just like you have bush doctors out there who take traditional remedies, there is something to say, no? That still, man, lawyers useful, and I would have liked to see many more here. I was going to start another way, but my first thing, right? And why do I look to elders? Firstly, I look to God when it comes to this, and I pray for wisdom, I pray for understanding, and I pray for Belize. When you talk about our Constitution, as I understand it, and I spend the night before Ghana market to skim through, and before that, and as attorneys, we know that you never learn the law, you can recite it, you can whatever, but a lot of the understanding of the law, you have to be committed for life and teach people what you know by way of law in society. That said, I have here, and it's by providence, a constitutional book. Didn't read it through, but it founded something that tell me how you are today instead of not come, because this book has 30 Leinster Gardens, London, West Indies, or London, W2, sorry. And it's a book of National Hero Philip Golson. I also looked through a book that had to do with constitutions with respect to a foremost person in the Caribbean, and as well, he was under the professorship of one of the writers here, and under Professor Carnegie of UA, as you would remember. And the only word I have as a student for the late professor was he was intense, exacting whatever. That said, my first thing is that Honorable Philip Golson used to counsel us. Whatever it has to do with the country and people and Constitution of Belize is not to be dealt with by way of any secrecy or any secret oath. And the man that he was and the Belizean that what he was, he had a tradition, history, and he has left us a half course. He's a lesson. Anything that is being done by way of, and I was here last time at Swift Hall, I think about 4 months ago. Am I being heard?
Yes, yes.
And I believe it was Senior Counsel Lois Young who was asking, and if I understood the response rightly, and I tend to have a good memory, I don't remember most gossip and bad mind, but certain things, she asked the question, and the answer was that basically there were certain things which were being held in secret. That will have to be corrected, and Belizeans have a right to know. We're not going through the motions with this. With respect to the Constitution, what has been thrown before the people, and if you will bear with me, maybe you want to eat, could eat. Who says Sharon puts long meter? I understand, I'm used to that, right? With respect to this matter, the most important matter, Dr. Abigail referred to the right to your Constitution. I was hearing, and I think it was a minister who presented and was saying, the whole process is about whether we need one constitutional change, period, no go further. And the other thing, the government has the constitutional majority. We know that to change the constitution. Well, if you're coming to the people, they're not softly, so that later on, 10 years time when people look back and say, I never this we want, neither understand, when we want to say to the people, I want to bless this, I want to never left for no whatever I come, and this is it. One thing I want to say, and I will say a lot, if you'll allow me till somebody says shut up, with respect to constitutions, they have to do with permanence. And I would say that when I say that backdrop, whatever you call it, will instill in me that a passion for fight for we Belize Constitution. We were being told, and people will be told, you know what? They hand you a constitution. Well, you know what? I want to say thank you, Jesus. What people have to be made to understand, learn, and we learn from people too, is that this constitution we have, the Westminster parliamentary system, the one that allows you the freedom of speech, the one that gives you all the constitutional liberties, came out of a heritage, legal, practical, of 1,000 years of England. This constitution that the thing was separate with as a people with an identity from the revolutions around us. And we have a common law parliamentary system. I want to say something else. When Mr. Ghost was blind and going around subway in New York, me not like subway, me afraid for crowd, me afraid for big city. I only got one passport, Belize, and I get back to that. He said, you have to know what question to ask. So, Belizean, when you better know what question to ask and what position to put forward. With respect to the Constitution and the fundamental rights and freedom, as I tell people, the first stance has to be, you protect your Constitution, you fight for it. And if I say it before, I say, Constitution is not something where you see a lead thread and you're going to pull it because it can unravel. I am at the soul last night, that's some me take inspiration, you know, because the old-fashioned tailor, seamstress, the cobbler, the late Philip Garber Sr. would have said, you know what? Don't be like that idle, dramatic picnic. Strengthen, galvanize, protect that which has protected you. With respect to some features, I will go through some of them very quickly. And it's by way of question, commentary. We've heard about fundamental rights and freedom. Basically, with respect to your Constitution, the man in the street, the lady in the street, the person out there will want to know, is my time up?
No.
It's too close?
No.
Oh, thank you. I'm not so good with that.
Continue, please continue.
Is it better now? Okay, thank you. Basically, have we, the people of Belize, given politicians and government one stick to broke? We're back. Asking ourselves that. If we don't want people, when it comes to important thing, we need to know, do we want, Mr. Kemp would have said, open packet? Make the people know. With respect to some of the features of the Constitution, some questions have been asked, some things have been said. I know Mr. Usher, I think although I'm just a year or two, I happen to teach Mr. Usher at Wesley College. I never applied to any other institution, but that for a semester or two. The thing is that I have the regard for you as a student of the law, and as well, I know that when we people made a vote at St. George's here in a public meeting, long before 1919, when the suffragette movement in Australia and England after the war, we had women and blacks to vote. Our history will not be denied, for we people build this country. When you talk about what was thrown out about indigenous people, and there was some international agenda and a change, and that was imported and transferred to Belize. Is it real? Yeah. Thank God, showers of blessing, maybe something where I say, good. What we have to look at how you operate and affect your Constitution. We have that Bill of Rights where say freedom from discrimination on the basis of race, color, creed, religion, or whatever. I am saying I am Belizean first, and I had a Creole, and I mix up like one bile up if you go into it. And Mr. Paul will know the Moors from Africa invaded Spain. Queen Elizabeth family was said to say we're all one people. So if you want to get into DNA with all black with a Creole. The other thing as a Creole, I know that that round table format for diplomacy was invented in Africa. I've said to the Creole Council, make we choke mouth. So the first format would have been a circling of chairs with the leaders in the middle of the circle. I would suggest that. When it comes to an example you gave, if I may say, Ed, Mr. Usher, you mentioned the court with respect to somebody being able to protect his personal privacy. With due respect, the very thing is an example of privacy and some other tenets which the Constitution of Belize uphold. The Council of Churches is led by, if he hasn't been changed, the Bishop of my Methodist Church. I have had to go to the Bishop of Anglican Church, who I think I was taught a little bit, prefected, something like that, at Wesley College. We have, and I believe the gentleman evangelical touched on certain things. I have said before, and I try to say it politely, but we have a lot of foreign agenda which are transferred and run down the throats of Belizean. People don't understand where they catch me. We have a way of life and tradition. The English common law, you won't find the English Constitution written in any one book, and it is said to be strongest for where it's not written. But as Mr. Ed alluded to, the best part of the Constitution is knowing where to find it. When you allow me to sing Rain Can't Stop the Reggae Jam Independence 1981, and Miss Lida, God bless his soul, she come out with a Creole song. We had the Union flag drop and Belizean flag high span top. Okay? My father gave each of us a copy of the Belizean Constitution. I was no student of law, but I believe the educator, Dr. Abigail, asked certain things. And it is that call it what you want, but we used to have one thing which was strong civics in our schools. One other thing I want to say about the Constitution before going to some features, but I think it's important that Belizeans understand this backdrop. And you see what we're there? This neighborhood, you see the people that were out here, you know, right around the corner from the school, children never protected from things what they call weed can there, so you have a thing called the moral backdrop to the Constitution. The preamble, which has to do with the spirit and strength, and the type Constitution we have is strongest, is galvanized in 1,000 years of conventions. What it boils down to? The Constitution only as good as the people were prepared to protect it. One person's privacy should not infringe to the society's way of life. You want to do something in your bedroom or so on and so on? Maybe everybody will say, go through with that. But there is a thing called public morals, decency, way of life. We as a Belizean people know that we have some tenets, and it goes to the survival of your family. With respect to indigenous people, we Creole indigenous, how we not indigenous in our own country. So when they come more indigenous and change the Constitution, that to my mind should never have happened. And I have said, but maybe people who are here, if I had a 62nd recommendation, it would be, with respect to the Constitution, all Belizean rights equal, and if you're indigenous, Creole indigenous, so now put that in one part and halfway in another part. Stop step power because we're not a beg pardon. The other thing is that talk about freedom of movement, right? Personal liberty, right to life, and all sorts of other things, right? I'll give you a few examples how it makes sense to the man and woman out there. When it comes to right to life, yes, there might be some limitations, but I think Mr. Paul alluded to that God-given right to life. Francis Alexis, doctorate, who I referred to, when you look at how he started for his thesis and his seminal book, Yes, please, and he can take as long and I'll come back.
No, we don't got time.
Or if you figure this is enough, then. But there are some essential things for the people of Belize, which as a matter of national duty, I will debrief on, and who begs.
Thank you, Ms. Pitts.
I would just like to respond to Ms. Pitts. I'm very proud of her. She's my classmate. And those are some salient points that she presented today. And I think she deserves that round of applause. I believe that the Creole Council have chosen an excellent person to represent them with all of the different recommendations that she put forth. Ms. Pitts, what I would like to ask you, because I will tell you, and just for the benefit of you who are sitting here, what she has articulated today has been told to us by all the foreigners that have come into this country. We have an excellent constitution. We have especially on the preamble of the constitution, we get a lot of praise for our preamble. So what I would like to invite you to do, and perhaps the Creole Council has authorized you, I don't know, but if not, I would like to ask you to, so that we do not miss any of those important points, that you submit those to me, Ms. Pitts, in writing, because I need to have those in, all of them are recorded, but you seem to have a lot more that have not been articulated, and that is precisely why we're here today, to hear you.
Respectfully, I have asked a serious question. It was asked the last time, and to my mind, it's a stance that Philip Golson taught us, and it's a demand and a serious one for the people of Belize, that we know and have full prior disclosure of what is being discussed. I don't want to be like the child in the classroom being patted on the head or shoulder. I don't want to know that the foreigners have blessed us. What I want to know is full disclosure on the methodology, what is happening. I came here today and saw, I still don't understand certain things where they happen. One survey or a questionnaire, I will not be answering it until we get full disclosure and an understanding that there will be no secret oath and a hiding from the people. If it is honest and proper, disclose it to the people. That's what I want to know. And I'll come back to some of what I've observed. But as I said to certain people, this, and I said earlier, this constitution thing not stop. They are not so lily notes, right? You they talk about the constitution, the best way to deal with it, in a block, not fix it. Only they tamper with it, and I'm saying it respectfully. But we have to batten down in, we can't get in the trenches and say, you know what? We're not going to market, we're not going like Brian Nancy at Savannah, but tell Cole good morning. We protect what we have. And I have friends, extended family, in here and outside of here. It's not about me, it's about them. And we're not going to have niceties but protecting with people. This constitution protect we, and it protect with children. No ifs, buts, nor maybe. It's not a favor, there's no condescension. If there are certain things we fight for, this, that it, we can't this our country, this our people. I'll get back to some things about identity, right to life and all the other things. Sorry.
I have to answer this, sir. On the People's Constitution Commission, when it comes to secrecy, there is nothing, and I want you all to leave with that understanding today. There is nothing that is going to be happening in this Constitution that is not going to be public. This is the evidence of that right here. Ms. Pitts, is that every session is recorded, your comments, that's why it's important that whether you send them in writing or you record them for posterity, it's here, but there is nothing secret. And at the end of this exercise, the voice of the people will decide at a referendum. And so please understand that that is the process. There's nothing secretive about what we're doing in there. We are there to hear. We're in these places around the nation to hear from the Belizean people. If you want no amendments, that is what we will record, and that is the process. But at the end of the exercise, it goes to us, not to you, to us, the citizens of Belize, to decide what we, the people, would like to happen. That is how the democratic process works, and I assure you that the people around the table there are very good representatives of democracy and will ensure that that process is carried out to the full extent of the law. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, people. My question to you, Mr. Osha. Are you familiar with the basic structure doctrine?
Say again?
The basic structure doctrine.
The basic structure, yes.
Do you know what that prevents the government from doing?
Well, there is two sides to that, but the basic is that the government should not make any amendments to the Constitution that is not properly done within the due process of what the Constitution authorizes for that said alteration. So Section 69 says how the Constitution is to be altered. But I understand what you're saying. You are saying that the basic structures of the Constitution should never be amended. That is the right.
That is correct.
Yes, but perhaps that will need to be placed in the Constitution, because in 2010, if I remember correctly, that was when an amendment, or 2011 that I just mentioned, that was when an amendment was made to Section 2, which I told you is the area of the Constitution that has the teeth, that protects the same Constitution from any abuse from the legislature. But the Constitution in Section 2 was amended to say that once the proper procedures were carried out by virtue of Section 69, then it will not be deemed to be unconstitutional. So perhaps what you're saying, that is one of those propositions that may be made so that Section 2 could be looked at again. But as Section 2 is, and I understand you and we are on the same wavelength, but Section 2 says, and I read it earlier, I don't know if you were here, were you here when I read?
Yes, I was.
When I read that the Section 2 says that once the proper process and the proper alteration procedures in Section 69 were carried out, then that amendment shall not be deemed to be unconstitutional.
But
so maybe what you're saying,
it cannot be inconsistent with the Constitution.
With the basic structure you're saying.
Exactly.
Exactly.
No, Mr. Usher, the present government have a supermajority, and they can create any laws that they want. Am I correct? And in doing so, there's one thing that stopped them from violating Section 1 and Section 2 of the Constitution. Isn't that the basic structure?
The basic structure, as I said, is, and we discussed earlier, but I am saying to you that under Section 2, we amended Section 2. Section 2 was amended to say that once the proper process and procedures for the alteration of the Constitution is carried out, then that alteration will not be deemed to be inconsistent. It is here. So what you're suggesting, and I think and I hope that I am understanding, and I know the Constitution Commission is understanding, is perhaps a second look needs to be taken on Section 2, subsection 2.
So what I'm saying,
yes,
if you listen to our present Prime Minister, who wants to turn this country into a republic, he mentioned that he would go as far as using parliamentary votes. Now, you know that, and I know that he cannot do that, because it falls under national security. And this is why I'm talking about the basic structure which give the people their fundamental rights.
Right.
Now, we spoke about the fundamental rights, and when they can be taken away, some of it. Let's remind the public that only under Section 18 and a state of emergency, not a so-called state of emergency like the SOE in place right now in Southside, a state of emergency has to come under a proclamation and signed by the Governor General, not by the Deputy Governor General, especially when the governor is not sick or she is not out of the country. Thirdly, when I listen about constitution reform, I look at the Bahamas. It took the Bahamas 8 years to reform their constitution, not 18 months. And you know what they did? They strengthened the fundamental rights of the people and the judiciary division. But here, we are not really educating. We are not even talking about the fundamental rights of the people. Because today when I came in here and I was given a survey, when I look in section 12, and I don't know if it was done intentionally or to mislead, there's a section in there that is asking, would the people of Belize like to remove the Governor General and have an elected president? That is telling me that once that question is answered, the government will use this as a survey to say the people is willing to turn Belize into a republic. And I will leave it at that.
Okay. I just want to say want to make one comment. Remember what the representative from the commission said, that it will go to a referendum. So I'm just saying that we'll see how that works out. So it will not be that someone will make a final decision, as I'm made to understand, but it will be a referendum. So I don't know. But I find your points interesting, and I think the commission has taken Well, I can't speak to that. That is a law. I can't speak to that. I can only speak to what we are. So I understand what you're saying. The Constitution Commission is reporting it, and they will deal with that part. I can only, like you. Well, it will be going to a referendum. It will go into a referendum, so I will leave it at that. I cannot. Yes. Right. But you know what is not happening in violation of the same rights that we have about the people living in the diaspora and the Seventh Amendment who have no right to come to Belize and vote. Yeah. What is the use of going to them to find out their opinion when they cannot participate in a referendum as being backed up by the law of the state? Let's keep it clear. Let everybody know what is happening. I'm finished. Miss, 12 o'clock. It's time, it's okay to go.
With respect to the matter of citizenship and identity,
and the Constitution and Belize, and Mr. Gill was asking certain things. So, put it simply, the Constitution recognized, ban Belizean salt of the earth, and people who are of Belizean descent. And there was a 5-year carry-over period. Later on, bam, somebody decided, and I will tell you, as an attorney and following on my father, even though it was legal, we did not participate in getting fees for the sale, professional fees, of one Belizean passport, because I was taught, brought up before I born, university in utero, my cultural identity, my Belizeanship, sacrosanct. Now a part of the Constitution deal with citizenship. But when I say this for now, when it comes to your identity, I heard Mr. Paul refer to, we must recognize diversity of the people. I beg pardon. I have said before, we have this craziness with ICJ. And last time I said, they have with National Creole Council, they have other people. So what happened? We are being compartmentalized, balkanized. When I listen to Onosetja, when I listen to the Tarasetbe, we have to forge one strong Belizean identity, and not by paying lip service. Because when it comes to the ICJ again, you know what will hold this country? One strong Belizean identity. Right? With respect to citizenship, there are certain things which we're hearing, there are limitations to your constitutional freedom because to the extent, you know, infringe by somebody else. But most importantly, the fundamental, you have rules of law, which are certain you might read, but rule of law, we have to do with conventions and traditions and things, your whole sacrosanct. So basically, and I want to give you a quick example. One born Belizean could have the right to vote, or somebody else will buy free passport and present it could have the right to vote. Belizean born who are in the US, and I know you talk about money was sent back, funds and so, but people who were at the United Nations picketing and making voices, fought for this country, what are we afraid for? They have the right to vote too. But on top of that, or by way of an example, because I did not come here to be nice or friendly, I come here to protect the Constitution or get thrown out in the way. Citizenship. We learn after the fact. We hear, Belizean like your gossip, but think what if you hear, always catch them by surprise. 9/11, not even persona non grata, if somebody slip through the cracks and get your citizenship, that thing with a birthright, and for others are an exception. You turn them a persona non grata, you take that back. But we want to give terrorists for we Belizean citizenship. Not give it, that was not to be given. By who? By what right? No, no, no. I will say this with respect to Belizean identity and nationality. Guess what? You know, the very thing, the passport, you have to go through hurdles, you have to have money, you must have to get a credit union to borrow money, or win the Bolito when they play, figure, apply for your passport, go online, even if you don't like computer like me. Point is, certain countries, Jamaica has made the right to a passport a fundamental right. Baby D was in prison. Baby D was born, presumption of innocence. Baby D committed no crime, was not at the age of discretion, no warrant for arrest, no warrant for delivery of prison. That are things that transgress the rule of law. Food, I got in a market this morning, plantain 50 cents. Ginger, I had to buy one local piece. Guyana put freedom from hunger as a right to life. Liberty of the person. I'll finish in 2 minutes. If you interrupt, I'll take longer respectfully. Liberty of the person. When it comes to movement of the person, we have real estate people here, and no government, no lawyer, and certain people, no assessor, and tell the good people at Belize no. You have freedom of movement. the British and our Westminster parliamentary democracy and common law guarantee for it. Freedom, our foreshore, our commons. Guess what? You have people that say about private island, private beach. That is wrong, wrong, wrong. Belizeans must exercise those liberties and the courts must protect them. Right to life and health, I can tell you, the other day, they have right to life and you know they're not for hang you unless certain things are so. But there's another thing, right? And we have to see the extensions to the right, not just the limitations.
I just want to ask, I will stay here as long as you are wanting to ventilate your issues.
Can I please wrap up in 2 minutes because respectfully, I waited in line, I sat down, I waited behind 2 other people. Respectfully.
I want to excuse the speaker because he's leaving town. That's all I'm trying to ask you. I want to thank him for his time today. He needs to leave town and he's already...
He has a fire to put out, I understand. I came here because Mr. Ed Usher is here and I left some things as well. Leave fire I had to put out. But do your formality, please.
Thank you, Mr. Usher. On behalf of the People's Constitution Commission, we want to thank you for the engagement here today and we wish you safe travels and we look forward to working with you again. Please give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Excellent student of mine.
The commission will remain here and will stay until you're finished, Ms. Pitts. Thank you.
And I'm just reminded, right, that a section 69 is being used to bastardize the Constitution, you know, Creole talk. They can't call it other than that. I want to say that with respect to Belize, I've heard it said certain times that revolution, Belize never have revolution. Well, I want to put with people on notice and caution that, you know what, in my understanding, revolutions occur with gun and bullet and they run down the street. Beware, beware, res nouveau, if I pronounce it right, the French, something new. You remove the old established order and you place it. And when you replace it, people usually they sleep and then get caught. With respect to right to life, I was mentioning Baby D who was in prison. Mr. Gill was by me when we took a matter to court and the baby the same day, after all institutions of state fell down, the same day we instituted the suit, the baby was freed by the evening, but she wasn't really freed, but I won't get into the other part. All institutions of state fell down. With respect to life, we have extensions to that right to life. I see in Belize, right, we have a hospital, public health. People go there, no medicine. Medicine when it costs $2, you can't get it. Then the private one, you better get land paper or contract or something. But guess what? Me with that Belizean in a part of the states, they passed through one of the richest section, and the Belizeans in the community told me, so sick, they pluck them right from the hospital. They cannot turn back people in case of emergency. Public hospital, right to life. Somebody said earlier this morning, a lady dead, I think Mr. Kashmir mother, 99, I never know. I did a 96-year-old and several people of that age in the past month died, 96, 97, about 5 and it. A gentleman, a young man, I watched somebody, say, the elder died dead for old age. We got with young people that dead for young age. We young people who this Constitution should be protecting. The Constitution good enough. It requires the political will and policies and functionaries of state. I will give you one example. I've been saying for years. Last week I passed away. One man just dropping at the back of one police truck and then they lift up his hand, and I've been saying somebody gets shot, somebody gets stabbed. First responders should be ambulance. That's why we have doctor. Not even bush doctor to pronounce people dead. Right to life and liberty. Freedom from hunger I got the Lee market bad. That I'm a Lee proper preparation this morning, you know. Had to buy one slice of melon for $2. Orange at $3 for $1. Grapefruit, I'm $1 for $1. The piece of Noko ginger, I'm 50 cents. 2 plantain, 2 for $1. I asked the man if he'd give me one of the biggest one when he said pick. When I looked at one where they grow like twin, and they split it for sure that he may full belly, right? Well, I run to it, I say, give me a right so because I am baked. Pepitas macabre seed with therapy, with cultural therapy. Even that was not affordable at that point because they had the $10 bag and the $5 bag. When I asked for the $1 bag, no. The papaya small, the mommy to the papaya. Accessible, point of making, right to food, food security. So I catch with you in COVID. We are here in Taco exporting food. Anybody, and I don't know if you made the economics with me, but the best economics are the lady that go buy fish and go to market. The right to life have to do with a bill up a constitution. You can't strengthen a constitution unless you strengthen the health and wellness of your people, the dignity. But politicians like people to go clapping hands to create a beggar society and devalue our people. When you export orange, when you export certain things, food price gone up, and even the people got a market. Fish, $9 a pound. Me ask for 2 pounds, and me never get it clean. Point I'm making, forget to the point. Guyana has enough provision in the Constitution, freedom from hunger. We don't need to change the Constitution for all of these things. We need just to make sure we tighten up. There are certain other things, like with respect to dealing with our people. What I'm hearing is, and I think we have the one process when me not understand. If I don't understand, maybe people understand out there more. But when me not understand, me say so. You got through the motions, and you have parallel and this and parallel thing, and we are being told at some point we will know. The way I understand it, Mr. Philip Goldsmith, I say, I who not like it, but you know what, I'm a trust that man. And although he's gone, we are still instructed and inspired by him. And what he used to do, he said, you listen to the voice of the people. But you not go through the motions, because you have to have prior disclosure, ongoing. You have to know what you're to deal with. In Guyana again, right to have a peaceful assembly. Guess what? The Belize for the time of the Constitution, they passed one public emergency or something whenever they move back. But now you need to be 5 to assemble. Guyana have a freedom for peaceful assembly. That was something we took for granted and it was taken away. We have, and you, since you are the factor chair lady, you are saying you're part of the churches. I think I said before, and it's about tradition and way of life. I gone a church like the Bradley, I'm one of the least, right? But Good Friday, I made put in kind of like both abroad and here. One of the quietest days when you could fast, no meaning interfering in people's business through the jealousy window, but fast, eat piece of Creole bun and watermelon. No sale of liquor, certain things. Yeah, the pastor, they say, you know what? Something happened on Good Friday because of tourism and so on. We have a council of churches. Then I am offering pro bono, we'll deal with so and so because of our way of life. Guess what? The same ministerial pen, if anything, when it change that, could change that. There are a lot of things that they don't have to come to the people. So it begs the question that the gentleman before me was raising. Why are we going through this? And it seems to me that in all the circumstances, what Belize should be having, and I am recommending, a moratorium on any deal with our constitution. Something was said by Mr. Edosha about the Constitution in passing describing the state of Belize. Well, you know what? People who wanted to, politicians and others, they use a referendum to carry the people to ICJ, the right to vote. They marshal the people and line up like sheep to the slaughter. But this country, with respect to voting to go to an ICJ, and you heard what it said, everything subject to sovereignty. But international law is such that no country forced to go. Then try to pretend, well, you got one dispute, you got a court for resolution. It's something different. The very Constitution set out our country and territory. Mr. Ed is an attorney for Port Authority. By his saying that, and I'm no doubt they are well represented, but Belizeans, have you seen how in the last few years or a couple decades, the seaport of Belize, the land port of the Belize, the airport of Belize. Ms. Chairlady, when you talk about stakeholders, every time there's a stakeholder meeting, the people are not there. The stakeholders are the people who they put up money for invest and so on. And the people are left to feel like, if you know what, there's no value. When I dealt with the petition to uplift the Barrier Reef to World Heritage in danger, mine that went to UNESCO, and I was in Costa Rica, and they would talk about Sistema Americana, Sistema Recife Mesoamericana. I said we have the Belize Barrier Reef Reserve System, where serially enlisted, inscribed under UNESCO, 7 individuals supporting the criteria. And everybody, they go through the motions. Me know that if a government, but I did as one Belizean. And I know the souvenir shop, I give my all. When I go somewhere and they have something when I look like the Belize flag, I know I sit down there. When I don't refer to the country by the name Belize, I will not recognize it. These are the things which they dwindle. Then you know what? Now I said the people want it. When I put me through the process blindfold, and you have the Judas go to help chop off the head of the Belizean people. This Constitution is worth fighting for as it is. As it is. One other generation not to wake up. Every time we people get something, we look free, that they pick me and they get. When I say weed-infused candy, no, that are drugs they describe. We're not a drug autocracy. We're a place of family and people, and even women who are getting so-called advancement. It has been about men and the family. Men and the family. Otherwise, then they euthanize you as a country. They take over. When they say thing about Belizeans the other day, and what do they call it? For people come, where they say, Dula, that thing, and office to pop up, toilet to pop up, everything. Signage on Boulevard, signage here and there. That everybody except Belizean, salt of the earth by birthright, were being facilitated. When enough people not pop up, more money put in. Then lo and behold, I had a hair dress up our bad hair day. And the hair about before Easter, $200 for passport or Kogoda Belmopan. Person from PG, that a work, that a time, that a suck your teeth frustration. We don't need those things amended into our Constitution. I said to the few ladies at the hairdresser, by legal intuition, by birthright institution, that the birthright, none of our people for pay back our machine, that every Belizean must be, that are your identity and dignity abroad. That are your thing here that Belize. We have to not be hoodwinking the people. And Shakespeare was the first who said, the first thing we shall do, if I quote her right, and I said I'm an African lady, where I'm the poet, you know, kill all the lawyers, but you know what? Lawyers are the people who will come out for a community. St. Martin School produced me. Lakeside Methodist produced me. I never applied to St. Catherine's. I applied to Wesley College. And then I ended up at Sixth Form after I got technical for 2 weeks. But our thing is that We have to be teaching our people civics, not go through a daily thing and they say, you know what? It's sanctified and it's christened, because when they have these public sessions, when you go spend the time and read every section of the Constitution, I will tell you all, I don't want to say I'm familiar with Constitution, but I understand some of it. But in my understanding, you have to have the humility and the grace, especially when it comes to Belize. When I decided to be a lawyer was when heads of agreement. And my mother said, you can afford to fail your GC and your A-level, but you can't fail your country. We never gone through that for to hear something. And we know what platitudes. The first thing must be answered clearly. What will be disclosed in advance? Put a stop to this. Put a break to it till you report back to the people in full what you've gone through. Why the secrecy? Why were we being told last time out of secrecy? Then some platitudes now as though it's not that. It's either that or not that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again, Ms. Pitts. Your comments have been duly recorded and will be represented in the report, and all of the other issues that you have that are more urgent than in the report, I will make sure that those issues are recommended for a public disclosure. As I don't think the commission is operating. There was a time when we did sign an agreement such as that, and I believe it really was to protect the integrity of the process inside. And so, yes, ma'am. It was just a... Thank you very much. We will certainly get those to you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, just quickly wrap up. We'd just like to note that every member here, this is on? Yeah. Just like to note that every member here speaks for themselves, and I'm glad that everybody had an opportunity to say what's on their mind, give their concerns, questions, at least to the panelists now. The council will compile their findings and present it to the commission. On behalf of the National Creole Council, we'd like to thank Ms. Zavane, zone leader, along with her support staff for setting up today's event. Ms. Averine Bulver, the rep for the Belize network of NGOs, Mr. Michael Kemp, rep for the Creole Council, and Ms. Adila Young, alternate for the Creole Council. Thank you all for being here. We'd just like to close off with the quick raffle. If you have your tickets, we're going to do it now. We have 3 raffles for today, 2 100 and 1 for Biltmore, who I just picked. This is going quickly. The first one is $100. First number, I call it 3 times the person, maybe they're not here. I'm going to call another number, okay? The first number is 345881. Oh, you're okay. You could bring up your ticket, please. 345881. So it's $100. Mike, check right in my thing there. Oh, announce. Oh, yeah. Sure. 345881. Let me see. Okay, yeah. The 100. We'd like to thank the People's Constitution Commission for donating these prizes for today's event. The second number, 345858. So 58 is the last two digits. 345858. Anybody? Oh, okay. Just let me confirm the number, please. 100. And then the last one is a bit more. You could bring it here. 5858. Okay. The last one is it dinner for two? A bit more. We're way down to the bottom. Miss Sepiki. No, those are the last one. All right, it's 345850. 50 is the last two digits. 50. Anybody has 50? Those are the one that I called already. Nobody at 50? All right, another number. Last digit is 53. 345853. Anybody 53? Oh, you? All right. All right. Thank you all for being here, and do enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Thanks.